doing introduction and updates. So I'll be talking a little bit about how the regulatory domain is working. I think the highlight will be to hear from Wawan and Øivind, who, if I can be a little bit rude, are old hands at this. I think yesterday we heard in the main sessions a lot of interest in the regulatory process. And I think it's really good to touch base with two people who've been thinking about this probably the longest of everyone in the room. So before we start in earnest, I think, Sheila, you'd like to do the official.
Yes, please. Thank you. Hello and welcome to the regulatory domain session, which is part of the buildingSMART International Standards Summit Lillestrøm 2023. Thank you for joining. My name is Sheila Kurailam, and I will be your moderator today. Today's session is titled An Introduction and Updates. Our speakers today are Nicholas Nisbet, Director at AAC3 Limited and Vice Chair of buildingSMART UK and Ireland. We also have Wawan Solihin, who is Vice President of Nova City Nets and CTO of Fornax. We also have Øivind Rooth, who is Specialist Director at the Norwegian Building Authority. This session is scheduled to last 90 minutes with time for questions at the end. The session is being recorded and will be made available in the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to our speakers, I would like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. For the online attendees, your microphones will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you do wish to ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel, which should be on the screen. And for those in the room, please do try to keep the background noise to a minimum and raise your hand if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, and we'll bring over a microphone for you to be able to do that. And finally, I would also like to bring your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted, and the process for their adoption is transparent. And standards that are developed do not favour any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. So kindly take note of the Antitrust Code of Conduct, which is up on your screens. And on that note, I will hand over to Nick.
Okay. Thanks, Sheila. Okay, and yes, I hope we'll have time for questions as we go along. If we slip into jargon, or if we say things that you don't think are true, it's always good to be challenged and make sure that at the end of the session we're all together on the subject as much as possible. So a couple of things I'd like to cover. First of all, repeat my welcome. And we'll take a look at the role of the regulatory domain, and I'll say a little bit about how it works. I think the regulatory domain is quite different to many of the other domains that are meeting here this week, because we're looking beyond building models. We're looking beyond contractual relationships, and we're thinking about how the information we produce has a role in society, whether it's regulations. We're also interested in client requirements, which I think in the rush to adopt BIM can often get forgotten. And in due course, I think we'll also need to think about the kinds of recommendations that come from third parties. First of all, next, I want to thank the steering committee of the regulatory domain. In the last 4-5 years, with the increased interest in the regulatory topic, been really pleased and blessed to have a really good team coming together to think about the regulatory problem and to think about how we influence the wider community to understand the potential of open standards in the regulatory domain. And also we have a job to influence the rest of buildingSMART as we go along. And I'll also particularly thank Sheila for keeping us under control. Many of you will know that the domains, and I may call them rooms by mistake, but they're now called domains. Look, it says room filter, it should say domain filter. But the basic idea of all the domains is to act as that two-way channel of discussing the issues and problems around the regulatory process and making sure that the buildingSMART standards help solve them. And it's also a channel, of course, for disseminating what the buildingSMART standards can do. I think the other thing about our scope, well, as from the rooms we get projects, from projects we get proposals, and proposals we get industry adoption and extensions to the standards or improvements to the way the standards work. I think our scope covers both building and infrastructure, which is always a brave thing to say, because as soon as you say that, someone somewhere will say, but they're different. And I think, you know, there are a lot of differences with buildings. There are usually institutions and organizations and local authorities engaged in the process. With infrastructure, it's sometimes a lot nearer central government. Some infrastructure organizations are self-regulating, which is always interesting. But I think the challenge is to find ways to make sure that the assets that the built assets that we look after meet society's expectations. And those expectations, of course, are getting fiercer and fiercer. The way we're, oh, hang on, can I just, oh, yeah, sorry, this. Yes, in the session today, we'll hear from Wawan and Øivind. We have a session later today at 4:30 when Tommy and I will be looking at one of our projects, one of our current projects, which goes by the name of the Regulatory Information Requirements Project. And this is really saying that we believe that across internationally, many of the things that are regulated are the same. The individual rules may be different, but the things that are regulated, fire, resistance, access routes, U values are the same. And so we're working to make sure that the IFC schema and the buildingSMART data dictionary has that content so that around the world systems can be developed which can rely on finding the information that's needed. Oh, this evening we're having a dinner, but it's not 7:30, it's 7 o'clock. And if you want to join us for dinner, pay as you go, you have to talk very nicely to Sheila. And then tomorrow, we will have a workshop led by Franco Coyne. We are developing a document, guidance for regulators. Regulators don't always come to buildingSMART summits. Sometimes some regulators rarely leave the buildings they work in. And so we wanted an outreach document that we could try and get to them to say, don't be afraid of BIM, don't be afraid of open BIM, don't be afraid of the technology, because we believe it works, and because there are ways of managing the regulatory processes that are acceptable to government agencies and so on. So we're moving to finalize some of the content and start to think about what the final form will be. And I'm sure that Franco will lead an interesting discussion of what we can say about the regulatory process. Okay. We have two diagrams we rely on a lot. We don't see this as a yes-no, on-off decision. We can see that any regulatory system is going to move stepwise towards automated code compliance. I think there are always lots of questions around automated code compliance, whether it's possible, whether the system is all too subjective or too ambiguous. I have a colleague in London who's writing a PhD on ambiguity in regulations. She's found quite a few. So stepwise, we need to think about how that progression happens. Why do we want to make that progression? I think there are two reasons. One is we want to use the knowledge and skill that's been captured in things like regulations and advice notes fully, and to maybe to free up the regulatory experts to actually go and look in muddy puddles to see if the foundations have actually been constructed correctly, free them up to focus on where there are issues to be resolved. So we have a stepwise attitude. It's a ramp here, but steps, ramps, almost the same thing. So we sort of divided up into looking at the manual process, thinking about basic digital formats for sharing information, and then using the models, and then ultimately, and by ultimately, I mean in a few weeks' time, fully automated. I think and of course that means thinking about what can't be automated and what the systems will be. But I think both society, I mean, I come from London where we had a horrible fire. I think society expects the regulations to be enforced rigorously. And I think when it comes to things like client requirements, clients have a reasonable expectation that their requirements will be implemented. I trained as an architect 40 years ago, and lesson one was ignore the brief. And I'm not sure that was quite the right doctrine, and certainly it shouldn't be spoken out loud. So yes, we have this general ladder vision ramp, and we're working towards it. In particular, broadly speaking, we're concerned with a facility development process, concept design, technical design, construction, handover, use, and the regulatory processes, and they all get called different things in different countries, but concept approval, might call it planning or zoning, or permitting. Then we have technical approvals, and then there may be construction inspections or revisions to the technical approval. In many countries, after handover, there is usage approval, permission to occupy, maybe just once, maybe every 5 years, and so on. We also have an interest in archiving, in that governments like to keep records, and sometimes they're legally obliged to. And so I think it's very much part of that societal interest in the built environment that we should think about how we archive our building information, our facility information, and maybe also how we archive the regulations that were applied, how we look back and say, what regulations did this facility pass and when? We have a roadmap. It's our second version of a roadmap. It's holding together quite. Whoops, is that the one I want? Let me talk about this one. We have a roadmap, and with various aspects to it, with how we engage with our community, the technology that we need. We think about implementation, and we will think about evaluating the impacts of what we're doing, and then sustaining it, because nothing we're doing is one-off. Regulations change. No one's going to write an automatic code checking system tomorrow that will last 10 years. The regulations change all the time, so we need to think about how we maintain the ecosystem of things we need. So on top of this general roadmap, we have put our projects at the top with the engagement. I've mentioned the guidance for regulators, helping them to understand what our offer is and what we're leaving in their hands, what we're not trying to change. We have the RIR project, thinking about information delivery and trying to enhance the IFC and the VSDD with the information that we know we're going to need. And so going forward, we've had on our roadmap IFC-based CO2 calculation requirements for regulatory use. We've delegated that to another group called the Sustainability Strategic Group. But I think we are filling in bits on this map as we go along. And hopefully, we can contribute to the momentum that we heard about yesterday. Okay. So that's our things. I'm very happy if any of you have any questions or thoughts about how we take that forward. All the projects we've carried out have been started because someone in a room like this says, "Don't you think we should do X?" And I hope that we can be open and engaged with the projects that are happening around the world. We'll hear from our two speakers. If anyone else in the room has got some news about what's happening in their country or jurisdiction, very glad to hear about that. At one time, we did track all the initiatives that we track all the initiatives we know of, but I think actually in the last 2 years, it's almost become impossible to know all the different things that happen. So with that, I'd like to introduce Wawan from the Singapore chapter. Wawan and I worked for Wawan, I think, indirectly, 23 years ago. And since then, he's gone on and contributed to the subject, not only in industry, but he's also picked up a PhD on the subject. And so I'd like to welcome Dr. Wawan to update us about the Singapore initiative.
Hi, good afternoon. So, glad to be here. And I would like to share with you about what we actually do in Singapore in relations to this code compliance activities, and especially in relations to OpenBeam. So, right. So, as Nick mentioned, I've been working with this code compliance stuff for 22 years, truly. 22 years. And I did my PhD several years ago with Professor Chuck Eastman. So if you have a BIM handbook, then you'll probably see the name. He passed away in 2020. I was actually the last student that he had. So, yeah. Okay. So what I will be talking about today, be talking about brief overview of Connect in Singapore, and then we will be talking about our journey with OpenBeam, and the development of IFCSG. So we developed kind of standards with OpenBeam for code compliance, and I will report a few things about where we are today. Right, so just to introduce you and give you some feedback about what CONNECT is. CONNECT is essentially an initiative that BCA actually did for to improve the productivity of the industry, the construction industry. It started in 2001, and we had kind of three significant projects that we did in Singapore. One is CONNECT e-submission, which is actually still running today. CONNECT e-info is for all the informations in one place or related to regulations. And then CONNECT e-plan check, so automated code compliance check. So we actually did that a long time ago. And then we have this CONNECT X. So you probably have heard it yesterday being mentioned. CONNECT X is basically the next phase of that initiative. It focused on using BIM this time, and it also focuses on collaborative workflow. So there are some changes that the regulators will actually do and how to deal with submissions. And so this is the current situations where they actually submit to one place for CONNECT e-submissions, and then the applications actually are relatively individuals to different authorities. And often that replies is not coordinated, and so sometimes it can be contradictory. So one agency say, fine, I'm okay with this, and the other agency say, no, this is not compliant, and then you have that confusion. Now, with CONNECT X, the governments of building construction authorities looking into coordinated BIM models. So they want the users to coordinate everything first before do submissions, and OpenBeam will be the base for it. And at the back end, they will actually do coordinated response. So they introduce some technology enablers to be able to do that. So they will collaborate among themselves, making sure that whatever they respond is actually coordinated, consistent. So this is the brief kind of pictures on how actually that will be. And key components is that you will see that there is a collaboration platform among the agencies to coordinate the approval. There will be automated model checkers, which is under development right now. And then there will be centralized data hub. This is not done yet, but it will be in the very near future, and it is based on OpenBeam standards, which we call it IFCSG. And this is our journey with OpenBeam. So we started actually quite early. The entire code compliance checks initiatives started in 1990s, late 1990s, with a system called BP Expert. It didn't really take off because it used 2D and then 2D convert to 3D. And it used very proprietary systems, so it didn't really work out very well. In early 2000s, CONNECT initiative came in. We adopted IFC. So we started off with IFC 151, if you're old enough to use that. And we ended up with IFC 2X2, which we have a lot of our requirements built into that IFC 2X2. In 2018, the renewed interest in terms of code compliance check. The earlier implementation was not actually implemented to the industry because most of the time industry was not ready. At that time, BIM was not that popular in the country. The IFC standards is not yet widely used. Right. So in 2018, there are various activities actually going on. So Urban Pre-Development Authority and Public Utility Boards basically took the initiatives to develop their own so-called code compliance check within the department. And then CONNECT X came in. basically will then put all these initiatives together. ConnectX had the pilot projects in around 2020, and right now in 2023, they are developing the final versions of it. And at the same time, about 2020, we did the IFC-SG project. So in particular, because in this room, in this domain, we are interested in terms of the IFC requirements. And this IFC-SG is basically localized IFC standards for Singapore regulatory compliance. And we did actually develop that standards. It is, as I mentioned, part of initiatives, ConnectX initiative. We developed based on about 58 code of practices and standards from 7 different agencies in Singapore. We did that in 1 year. The number of rules, I will show you later. There's a diagram on that, and it is based on IFC 4.0 reference view. So we consciously made these decisions because the IFC 4.0 reference view is the current kind of standards where all the implementers are starting to come up with certified applications. So we stick to that. And we also look at 4 popular BIM applications in Singapore. So Revit, ArchiCAD, Bentley Open Systems, and Tekla Structures. I just realized yesterday when I looked at the slides, they're all blue colors. I'm not sure why they choose the same colors, but they are blue. So this is kind of the overview and the statistics. What we look at, the 58 code of practices from 7 different agencies, the distributions, you see that in the pie chart. And then I actually break down to the number of rules. Now, you may actually see different numbers when we talk about rules, because it depends on how you number the rules. So some may say that we have about 2,500 and so on. But this one, we actually identify by what we call it the unique regulatory requirements. And so we have these numbers of 7,864 out of that 58 code of practices. And the breakdowns that you see there, the largest so-called number of rules requirements coming from Urban Redevelopment Authority, but the largest single number of requirements in one single code of practice is actually a fire code, right? So that's kind of interesting to see. And then, so how do we actually approach it? So we took a rather unique approach. The first one I mentioned earlier about we stick to IFC4. Reference view is not probably the best that you can, but this is what is available, so it makes sense to do that. We also want to make sure that it is immediately available. So if we demand something new that doesn't exist, it's going to be difficult, especially a country like us. Singapore is small. It's very hard for us to push Autodesk to do something, or Graphisoft to do something. So we stick to IFC4 reference view, and then we use standard mechanisms to extend that, allowed within IFC schema, which is we use predefined type for each of the entities. If it doesn't exist, we use user-defined type, and then we add the enumerations into object type attributes, and then we extend other things through the property set. And then in terms of methodology, we are actually trying to look at the rules, not just whatever explicit, but we actually try to understand, what's implicit. Sometimes there's some things assumed in the text. It's not written in the text, but assumed, sometimes related to what actually it talks about at the beginning and things like that. We also consider possibility of computation. So later I'll give you an example of that. Because what we define here, eventually we will use it for automatic code compliance. So right at the beginning when we try to identify what data would be required, we always consider, so what could be done? Can it be automated? Can it be computed? And so on. We then document that. We, as I mentioned, assess the 4 different BIM tools. Unfortunately, of course, sometimes we have something nice in IFC that we can use, but some of the BIM tools are not able to support it today, so we have to go to a lowest common denominator. But overall, we had actually pretty good collaborations from the vendors. Right? So all these from Autodesk, from Graphisoft, Bentley, as well as Trimble for Tekla. Then we actually document the modern guidelines for that IFC requirements, data requirements, and we actually come up with all the guides and the setup configurations and templates for different tools. And this is what we always consider. We try to optimize these 3 different things that we actually look at. We look at computational complexity. We look at modeling efforts. So from the user perspective, how much I have to model and put information in it. And then in terms of how comprehensive rules that can be implemented in terms of automated rule checking. Unfortunately, I kind of have the arrows 1 point different directions. So pay attention to that. For comprehensiveness, actually it gets more comprehensive as it goes into the center. So the first thing that we consider is the low modeling efforts, easy rule checking implementations. I give an example. For example, if we take a parking lot information and then that information already have the, what is the width, what's the length, that's very easy. Right, so you can check very easily, get that object explicit in IFC, you get the numbers, you can compare to the requirements, and that's it. In terms of modeling requirements is low, but there are a lot of rules actually cannot be automated easily that way. Right, a lot of rules are actually complex. And so the next stage we think about, okay, how about we make things more comprehensive, but then it may actually require a lot of modeling efforts. So one example here is that for accessibility route, you have to draw exactly these are the routes. So that's additional information that make it easy to check, make it more now you're able to check more things, but you requires a lot of efforts from the modeling perspective. Or we can increase the complexity of checking. So you try to figure out geometrically whether this is actually good, this, compliance. You do a lot of computations. It reduces the modeling efforts, still maintain the comprehensiveness, but then the computation becomes complex. The ideal that we are trying to solve, to seek, basically is kind of try to balance it. We still have a good comprehensiveness, less modeling efforts. One guide that we always use, and that I work with my team, is that when we talk to agencies, for example, how do we know whether it's too much modeling efforts or not? We say, okay, what do you ask people to do in 2D submission? If you already have to put a lot of information there on 2D, then there's no reasons why you can't do that in 3D. Right? It's just simply a different way of capturing that. So we try to optimize that. And this is an example. So we have requirements in terms of car parking requirements. So you have a lot of requirements about, the car park lots, the size, the headroom requirements, and so on. There's also requirements about the width of the parking aisles. Then the question is that how is parking aisles going to be modeled? Because it can actually get a bit complicated to do it, and none of them are modeled today. So we actually look at that. What would be the best way to do it in terms of the requirements of the data, but also possibility of doing automations. So this is an example. So we have a model typically looks like this in Singapore. I'm not sure in other countries, but this is typically how it looks like. This is multi-story car park. So the first things that we consider, okay, if we just subtract all the parking lots, because there is a requirement specific to parking lots, so parking lots will be modeled separately. So if we take out, then we actually have something like this. And then, okay, based on this one, we actually can separate the ramp. So we know the connection between these two decks. So if you see that the path at the top and below actually is different height. So separate the ramp. And then after that, we could actually compute the path. It will look like this, this simplified version of it. And so then to determine the path, the width, the direction, so how many lanes, we could actually use the arrow to tell us, whether it's two ways, different directions, or two ways, one direction, or one way, or when it actually turns and things like that. So if we can actually do that, which means that now the requirements for the model is simply, well, there's a floor slabs, obviously, you have that, and then the parking lots should be models, and ramps should be models, and then the next thing is just directional arrow. And then we can figure out actually where the parking aisle is. And that kind of more flexible. There will be some computation needed, especially when the layout is more complex. I actually tried to look for the sample, but unfortunately couldn't get the nice one. So this is the closest. So that's how we actually do that. So along the way, we did some kind of rule interpretations halfway, not too much about the logic, but we focus on what is the data requirements. So this is how it looks like in terms of what the final product, what is the mappings, and I mentioned about, okay, in the rules, there's mentions about, say, parking aisle. So what will be the required data? And we actually have this published in the website for IFCSG, but what you see in the website is a subset of it. It's not actually the complete one. Just for the purpose, just to show you, you don't have to read them. But this is the original spreadsheet. So we actually have a lot more informations and details and other things that we actually put in. What finally being published is the simplified versions. Is simpler for end users to see. This is another statistics about the counts. Now, after we do a mapping, so we basically, the main information that we collect is that if we have, say, parking aisle, what does that mean? What should be modeled? And so we have several layers of information. One is the entities, another one is the predefined type, and if it's not defined in IFC, it will be object types defined, and then the property sets and the properties. Right, so this is the numbers that we have. The identified components are those basically objects identifiable in the rules. It's about 2020, I think. Right. Then the standard entities, IFC entities being used, 59. The predefined type. These are standards, and then the extensions. We have this here, 534. The standard preset and the extended preset. So these are numbers just to give an idea how much that we actually have to extend from the current schema. And so the progress right now, that project has been completed. It has been gradually introduced to the industry. There's a new code of practice for ConnectX. So it is currently for public comment. And inside this ConnectX, there's sections really for the IFCSG. So how do you model it? What kind of information should be there? Pretty much what you see in that spreadsheet, but in a higher level, how you actually model it. And what we deliver in terms of projects, that we have that mapping spreadsheet that you have seen that earlier. We deliver the templates and configuration for 4 BIM applications that is used widely in Singapore. We actually deliver information manual And most of that actually is incorporated into the code of practice. And we actually also did a few test cases in the real world models. So we actually took the real world models and then we assigned all the properties and predefined types into it. And then we do some tests in terms of, what is inside that model. So at the current status, the agency has been undergoing a lot of trainings. One thing that we discovered in the Connect projects, the early stage in early 2000, the regulators or the officers were not ready. They used to work with 2D, everything is there. And then they come to 3D, you actually don't see that. They're handicapped. So they've gone through a lot of trainings basically to get them used to it in terms of changing the way how to do things. This IFCSG resource kit is released to the industry. As I mentioned, this is a subset of the entire things that we did to study. There's IFCSG validator, so the simple tool that you can just simply put your models and it will tell you whether it contains what is required in IFCSG. There are a lot of webinars for the industries, there are training courses, and there are some refinement to IFCSG specification because of the industry feedback. So as train the industry, maybe get some feedback, and there are some minor adjustment to that, but there's nothing major in it. And ConnectX model checker is set or expected to be first launched by the end of this year, or maybe early next year. That's what the progress is. All right, thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
I think there are some questions going, but can I ask the first one, which is, you said there are 7 agencies involved. What are they?
So there are 7. Urban Redevelopment Authority, so they're dealing with zoning, with urban, something to do with urban planning. Building Construction Authority, Land Transport Authority, deal with the roads, Civil Defense Force, which deals with fire code, National Environmental Agencies, Public Utility Board, and National Parks. So National Parks is kind of interesting because they are dealing with trees, and it's those public trees. You cannot just anyhow cut the trees. So there are some strange requirements in terms of those. Not usually modeled in BIM, but yeah.
Trees are good. Trees are good. Okay, you go ahead.
What's the position of the traditional heating board? The Singapore Assembly submission.
Right. So the idea is that when it comes to ConnectX, it should be model-based. But I think there will be cases where that is not sufficient because not everything is in the model. So there are certain things that is in the not in the models probably still have to be in 2D. Right.
But would a purely 2D submission still be allowed?
At the moment, yes, for the smaller development. So the BIM submissions is required at the moment for any project that is 5,000 square meters cross floor area and above.
Oh.
So anything smaller than that, actually, it's optional. Currently.
Okay. Right at the back.
We were involved in a few earlier projects and the pilot part of ConnectX, but somebody else thought you probably have seen the presentations. They do the final one. Yeah. No, not Solihin. No, it's not open source, unfortunately. That's a lot of effort they have to go into that. So, yeah.
So how many regulations or building codes could be automatically checked by the end of this year? You just mentioned that the Connect X will be launched by the end of this year.
A good question. I never count that. So what you saw, mentioned about 58 code of practices. I think this year divided into 4 different stages. So the first one consists of about 800 rules, but I can't remember from which code of practices. Yeah, but I think that still represent all the 7 different agencies.
So do you have any plan to expand or extend this kind of codes in the future?
Yeah, that's the plan, to cover all the regulatory requirements that can be automated.
So what kind of technology are used to represent the customizable language for BIM checking? Since there is
no specific kind of support rule language. Just simply that there will be documentations about what it means in terms of the rules, and then someone will actually implement that.
So you use the computer programming language?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. Just follow up on another question. So there's obviously a lot of work done in terms of translating your codes into something that can actually be checked. So I understand that. But from a technology standpoint, is it fair to say then you basically, the technology that you thought, technology you implemented, that the Connect X is an implementation of that in Singapore? Is that the core of the technology, or did you have to build your own technology on top of that?
Right. So what LipTop does, or what we did from my company perspective, we implement that technology on top of OpenBIM. Right. So IFC is the base where the model comes in, but then for the code compliance itself will be efforts built on top of that.
Can you qualify what that effort is? I'm just thinking of how does another jurisdiction approach this? So let's say somewhere else that they want to implement the same technology. Like what is the work that needs to be done that's jurisdiction specific?
Okay, so there are various ways that can be done. Ideally, is that you have something like what Nick is expert in with RAISE methodology, where you actually break down the requirements into certain things, and then it can be computable. We ourselves, and then we did some of the projects, we actually implemented some kind of conceptual graphs and trying to capture the essence of what is required and where should the information come from. And then the implementations is really implementing the logic and how you check certain things, how you compute certain things. So the computation part has to be done by some programming language, but you can kind of try to reduce or try to capture the requirements for the rules in various forms. So there are many different ways that people actually are proposing. So as I mentioned, RAISE is one. We did a conceptual graph, slightly different approach to it. So we have yet to argue about that. So yeah, but there are different ways in how that can be done.
May I also? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Good to see actually that things are moving on over there in Singapore. What I was wondering, what I think was a very nice diagram, was actually this trade-off between the computational complexity and the comprehensibility. What I was wondering is, I don't know if the authorities are actually willing to discuss or to debate also the problem-solving aspect of this one. So what of the regulations actually mean a lot of manual effort, right? And where are the low-hanging fruits, right? What would be the main targets actually to automate, where you would get basically the most gains from it, right? And start with this one, prioritization, and sacrifice for this one, this idea to fully automate it. I know that's not the full thing, right? But maybe to start with something where you really get the most gains from, and then you automate this one, and then baby steps actually going forward. So did you discuss something like that with the authorities?
Yes, so the authority kind of realized that. What they actually really plan to do is to work with implementers and then start identifying what should be the critical part of it. So there are certain exceptions maybe, or exceptional cases they may not be able to do, but they will be willing to do that. And some agencies, I can't say whether all the agencies will be open to that, but some agencies explicitly say that, well, if there is feedback coming in saying that this is too complicated, and they are actually willing to review some of the requirements and then change accordingly. Yeah, so at least some of them that I talked to.
But you've prioritized 800 for the first wave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you also comment on the industry feedback of what's been the feedback of the industry? Are they open to it? Have they been
Industry feedback? Yeah, this is something that is always difficult. So industry, especially in Singapore, I'm not sure in other countries, they always don't want to change, right? So whatever you actually ask them to do, they will say no. There has to be some push to it. So right now, what the government is doing is really pushing that, okay, this code of practice basically is coming, then you have to do it very soon. So now you have to be prepared. They have to actually be prepared. And we receive a lot of feedback from the industry saying, I don't know what it means. I think there's some here that is from LTAs probably also can say the same thing. You mandate this, and then people start complaining, why you have to do this, a lot of work to do. But eventually, everyone has to understand, to be able to improve productivity, there will be certain things that you have to do or to change, because then you can reap the benefit of productivity. So it will be a process, I think, to get there.
Okay, thank you, Wawan. I think we'll be time for some more questions, but thank you. Sorry? Okay, quickly. Øivind.
Just commercial break. The regulatory information requirements project, which we are going to do the session later today, we are actually, if you remember Wawan's slide, where there's IFC entities, predefined types, standard properties, and so on. So that's our kind of the goal in the regulatory information requirements project, that we want to make move the columns in a way that there are more content in IFC standard and less in local kind of implementations. So if you're interested in that, please be there. And we are trying to make the session like more proactive. So less slides, more discussions. So that was the commercial break. And then to Øivind.
And then to Øivind. And,
this is this afternoon.
So very glad to welcome Øivind. As it happens, I've also worked for Øivind in the sense that he was the first chairman of the regulatory domain when I joined some 6-7 years ago. Some of you will have seen the presentation yesterday in the big hall. And I think it's going to be interesting to have the chance to ask some questions afterwards, perhaps. Anyway, over to you, Øivind.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I will repeat a lot of what I said yesterday, maybe dive a little bit more into the details. But hopefully have some questions afterwards. First of all, I have to say that Wawan is here because it's actually this year, I think more or less this week, I think 20 years ago, there was a Norwegian delegation down in Singapore. And we learned about BIM and saw what they did. And we went home and said, we need to do the same and we should be done by 1 year or something. We are still here. So, and actually before that, even 5 years before, I was with a delegation from the municipalities of Oslo, met Cheng Tai Fat and Kiwi from the building BCA in Singapore. And we learned about the coordinate e-submission and info, and that was to inspiration, and we started to implement it. So that actually was almost the starting point of what I will present today, I would say, in Norway. That trip in 1998. But we are still something to do. Okay. So, as I said, for those of you yesterday, we need to use a little bit of time about how the Norwegian legislation system are built up. I will not talk about products today. I will just talk about, we have of course, the Building and Planning Act. And we have two set of regulation. It is the regulation related to application process and responsibility. And the other one is the technical regulation, more traditional technical building codes and so on. But we have this we have as acronym SAK. It's quite useful for us, and was more or less the foundation why we was able to build up an e-submission system in Norway. This, of course, I see you have made a more modernized version that I have. Can I have a copy?
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was, we started a long time ago in the regulatory room to just try to discuss building processes across countries. We need to have something in common ground to start a discussion. And what we did say here is that everyone out there asks someone to build something. You need to have a permission. How big the building are before you start to ask someone differ a little bit, but sooner or later someone have the system, more or less all countries, I guess. And then after that, there are also some rules who say something how this should be built. Started off in the old days with fire safety regulations. That's funny stuff with the Norwegian fire safety regulation. That is traces back to the Norwegian, they call it a country law, landslaw from 1200 and something. So there's a lot of history in there. And then, of course, you have the construction phase where you have to check that the building is according to the design. In Norway, we have authority control on the first part. That means that the municipalities say it's okay to build this building to this use on this place. And maybe also a little bit how this looks like. But the rest of this is more or less privatized. We have a system with the responsible companies and so on, but we don't do, there is no, in any local authority in Norway that's checking if there is the fire safety requirement and so on. That is up to those what we call responsible companies to do this. So it has to be done by the project itself. And it's a system around it. Of course, there is checking, high-level checking, mostly document control from the authorities to see if they do what they should do. And that is a framework that we need to follow, because if we go to this e-submission system first, as I said, we have done this for 20 years, but we did a lot of learning those years. And one of those learning was that the authorities is not the best one to make software tools. We started with what to try to build up a system where we have private companies to deliver the e-submission system for the applicants. So I think they have done some similar in Finland as well. Today it's 5 such applications in the market, and hopefully it will be growing. But we need to have a central hub, which is by the responsible of the authorities, where we check the data against the regulation, validate it, and we distribute it to the municipalities. And the municipalities, all of them have one access point. All of them. It's important. For those who have many municipalities, it's important that this is actually owned by the municipalities, not something that the government state level is pushing on them. So this is owned by the government. And all of the government then is connected to this, and they have also 3. The government, the local authorities can buy the case management system that fit for them, and there's 3 in the market. So the only thing we have in the middle here is what we call buildingSMART, which is the name we have on this. It's a kind of common services. But we say that the highway here is open because the data is now flowing through from the applicant system through the buildingSMART. It's validated. If it's not good enough, it's returned. If it's okay, it's sent to the municipality's access point, and from there sent to the right municipality should have it. And if there is something, it can be the permit, but it can also be comment or asking for more information. The information go the same way back again in the system. And this system is now quite robust. The first system we built, the only way protocol we had to send something to municipalities was an email. That was not the most perfect system at all. There are also a lot of ID, electronic ID and everything in here now today. So here you see the front-end system that is to the applicant side. They are connected to the company register, cadastre, or the GIS mapping system, planning system, zoning. You can check against the zoning plan and all that stuff. So they can do a lot of automatic. If you say what you want to build and what you can pre-fill a lot of that information. The system is quite user-friendly, much more user-friendly than what we had before. And then we have this in the middle here, what we call the buildingSMART, where we again check against the cadastre, the geodetic information in Norway. We have personal contact information, NATO, national data catalog, a lot of other national infrastructure in that information that is relevant in the building application process. And of course, down there we have the possibility to check and notify the neighbors. That's a quite impressive system, if you ask me. You can do that. Even larger project in Norway, you have to. I guess it's in many other countries as well. You have to notify quite many neighbors about what you plan to do, and you have to have communication with them and everything. And that is now fully automatic online. They generate automatic the list of neighbors, send it to them by the normal official way, digital way, the Norwegian government communicate or the municipality communicate with the citizens. So we use the government infrastructure that is there already, also for other purposes, taxations and so on. And we deal with national statistic. I guess it will be more of this when we talk about the EU and the building logbook, I guess. And we also have a strong connection to one of the other authorities. We have not that long list that I have, impressive list that I have in Singapore, because they have not that many authorities, but the labor inspection authorities are now fully connected, and there will be others also in the pipeline. But they are not allowed to get on the list yet. They have to do their work properly. And then, of course, there is on the municipality side, they have the same support in their system. So it's easy for it's a total different workspace for the municipality officer doing this work. So this is up and working today, and it seems to be quite robust. But as I said, yeah, this is a notification system. But as I said yesterday, also there is no BIM here. We have a module for validating a BIM model, so it's possible to attach a BIM model and have it validated against the XML, say what kind of information should be in the model. But it's still, first of all, you need still to manually put in some information, because the software system are not able to generate that information from the model automatically and put it in the IFC file on the right place. And there has not been no demand in the market. In Norway, most companies do BIM, so that is not the problem here. But I think it's a lack of confidence. They are confident to attach the PDF drawings. And I think also the officers on the municipality are quite happy with that solution. So at the moment, it's on some kind of standstill. But I guess there will be a movement. We will do the next step in a few years, I guess. It's on the list what to do, but we need to make some push. So maybe this on the technical regulations. I think you kick me in my leg if I use it for too long time, because that is also quite different from Singapore. We have these performance-based codes. Skip this one. Just go to this one. That say that, for example, first of all, we don't have any requirements about parking lots. Many said we should, because there's a lot of discussion out there. But if we had, the only requirement we would have is that it should be sufficient for the purpose. That's all. And maybe in the operative requirement, we could have some more, maybe even a number. But that is just a requirement, it's not a regulation. So this is more or less the system, but we have a lot of requirements. So there is a lot of frustration out there. What is requirements? But since we are giving the requirements, people out there think it's also regulation, but it's not. But sometimes, of course, we also have some of what could have been a requirement is in the regulation, of course. I think you heard about checking. So there is a lot of fun stuff in this. Since I said, it's a history back to 1200 years, so it's a lot of fun in here, starting to digitalize it. So what do you do in Norway now? We have some colleagues back here who do. Can you raise your hand? Yes, if you have detail, ask them. But we have a project. We have doing this for a while. It has different name, but it's the same goal. We want to achieve automatic code checking, and we want to have more digitalized support on the technical, how to use the technical regulation. So this project has main goal that the technical regulations are easy to understand, use, and arranged for digital use, including automatic code checking. And what we learn in this other regulation, SAK, as I called it, in 2003 or something, that we did clean up in that one, and then it was quite easy to digitalize it. And also the funny thing, it was easy to people just to read it and understand the contents. So this clean up, prepare for digitalization, and make it more easy to use is more goes hand in hand here. And because of the regulation, I said that we have privatized the most. We cannot do what they do in Singapore. We cannot have a rule engine. We cannot have any tools on our side. We just will give the regulation in some kind of machine-readable format on an API that can be used. And if someone have a good receipt, a standard, how this could be done, please, I know you have said it, but I don't, I think there is discussion. We need more discussions. This is something because we really need to work. API, yeah, but how should the API, which format should the rules be? So it's easy to catch them into some kind of software, and because I can come back to it and the reason why. Yeah, and this is some of the main challenges we have when we go to this technical requirement. We have not 7,000, we have 700. Also, but still, there is a lot of work to do. So there are, of course, missing definition term and properties, or there are some definitions have the same meaning, one meaning in one chapter and another meaning in other place in the regulation and so on. There is, of course, so this is a lot of unclear requirements, and the guidance to, as I tell you, that is and has an unclear status. So the conclusion is the level of precision is not good enough to be able to facilitate the digital use. So this is what we dive into now. So we want to achieve that the legislation of today's pre-accepted benefits will provide a clear legal basis. A simpler and more understandable set of regulation facilitates digital use. And a digital version that is discussed here of tech enables decision support and planning and automatic rule checking. Yeah, I skip this one. So this is the how do we work with this on high level? Well, we need to stick to the legal here. So because often when we discuss this in the buildingSMART community and elsewhere, we talk about the technical solution about it, but there is a legal aspect with this. We need to follow. As I tried to say yesterday, it's easy for those public clients. They make their own requirement. I can change it by themselves. We can't do that. We need to have the government with this. We need to have this out for public review, and so there's a lot of processes around this. 5 minutes, yeah, that should be enough. And then so what we're going to do here, we do have a step-to-step approach on this. We need to have knowledge, and we need to communicate with all the stakeholders. Since we are not making the technical solutions here. We do small pilot process. We had, at least I could have presented them. We have some done already some pilot project on different levels. And we will continue to do that. And we do this quality assurance through small steps. Try to be sure that what we actually do, because when we do some changes here, we need to change the legislation. And we have an acceptance from the government that is okay to come back next year if you see that what we did last year was not the best one, but it shouldn't be too many of them. And we have these long-term goals and this short-term plan. So this is a long approach. And in the meantime, while we are doing this, we hope that others can put up a good standardized way how this communication between the legislation and the technical solution in the market could be. Because we cannot set up, I don't believe that we can make one solution in Norway. For example, in Europe, this is high level on the stage in Europe. there is 3 research projects in Europe going on that should be presented on buildingSMART sometime, I guess.
Yeah.
And I hope that something comes out of those projects so we can do this in more or less same way across the Europe. The rules will be different, but the way this is handled between software and the authorities is more or less the same. Yes, I think this one, I think I talked about this. So, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Øivind. I think that's, it's good to see the issues that a regulatory authority faces. You're quite right to mention the European projects. There are 3 projects funded in Europe at the moment, Europe research projects, Accord, Check, and DigiChecks. And last October, we got all 3 to present to the buildingSMART regulatory domain community. And we will call them back from time to time to find out how they're doing. Any questions for Øivind?
Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned that the government is pretty happy with what they have now, right? So the digital workflows, the paperless notification of the neighbors and whatnot. Are there any market forces that could basically push the government towards a BIM solution? Like, for example, like, are there delayed applications? Is it taking a long time? Is there any kind of motivation whatsoever for government to try something new?
First of all, I didn't say that the government was happy. I said that the market was happy. I think if I didn't say it, that is, and if the market is happy, the government is happy. Yes, I guess it will. If, as I said, if some of these, for example, these 5 solutions that is out there have can implement a BIM tools into their solutions, they can start marketing it, and I guess we will support this. But it depends if the initiative at the moment, as it is today, will come from our side or it should be from market. I think it's, if the market say they want this strongly, I think we will respond. But I have a feeling at the moment we will not, maybe, because there is so we are a small organization with a restricted budget and so on, so we need to prioritize, and we prioritize what the market is asking for. So I guess the first step needs to come from the market.
Just a follow up on that. I understand from a regulatory perspective, the PDFs and all that work, but is there any appetite whatsoever to be able to bring these digital assets into a digital twin framework for the city? Like, is there anything beyond just a regulatory that might be of interest?
If there will be any digital twin in the city on city level or something, that is up to the municipality. That is nothing we regulate. So we need to ask, for example, I have no idea what the municipalities of Oslo, for example, or this we are now in Lillestrøm municipality, have any plan on digital twin or digital city models. I don't know.
This question for Nick or the rest of the community. Are there other perspectives that could push the municipalities to go towards BIM above and beyond just code checking? Like, one of the things that we're pushing in Canada, for example, is to basically position to municipalities that, yes, you can use it for code checking, but 5 years down the line, if you want to create a digital city, well, now is a good opportunity to actually get those digital models coming in. Like, has that been discussed in any other jurisdiction? Is there anything else that's related to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Can I just give a comment? There is one push that for more information that will come through this digital building logbook from EU, because we need to have more information in, not the model itself, but the information that is within the model. It's that usual. But if you talk about city models
yeah, I mean, I think in Finland, the example is that it was the archive authority that endorsed IFC, and it was the Building and Planning Act that said that submissions should be, in 2 years' time, a digital information format, and the two things came together to make a clear answer for the industry and so on. So I think that's one area where other pressures, mapping authorities and the archive function and those kinds of things. So yeah, I think we did do Tamir, who you know, did a report for us on the business case for automatic code compliance. What he gave us was a social analysis, really, of how you try and make a system where everyone gains somewhere in the system. And for a complex thing like the regulatory system, it's quite a good idea to say, you know, play winners and losers, and then decide who, if the losers are a good loss. Not that there are any lawyers in the room, but you know, if we can have less legal issues, then the industry will be happier. If we can have quicker results, then maybe investors will be happier, and so on. So you need to look at the whole system. Which reminds me to say that at 2 o'clock, the Legal for BIM group is meeting. Yeah. Any other thoughts before I? Yes, Frank.
This is happening somewhere else in the southern Europe, Italy and Spain and Portugal. There are some railway companies or the road companies that are adopting BIM, and they are trying to involve the municipalities. They have to go through with their roads and railways, and they are trying to involve them in a process and pushing them. Of course, they are not the government. They are not making this mandatory, but it's something that is happening.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you to our two speakers. I think that gave us a good picture. I'd really like the next time we meet to extend the conversation to some of the infrastructure processes, because of course they're different, and so on. I hope some of you will come back and help us at 4 o'clock when we'll be looking at regulatory information requirements in detail. Otherwise, let's thank the speakers and think about lunch. Thank you.